What if a black single dad was kicked out of his own hotel? It's almost midnight. The city lights blur behind the glass doors of one of the most expensive hotels in the country. Marble floors polished so clean they mirror the chandelier above. Gold trim on every railing. A fountain in the lobby that nobody actually needs, but that somehow makes everyone feel smaller just by existing. And walking toward that entrance, under a sky heavy with clouds, is a man who looks like he hasn't slept in days. He's black, he's exhausted. His coat is wrinkled from a long flight, his shoes scuffed from a day that started somewhere else entirely. A different city, a different life, a different set of problems. Beside him, holding his hand tightly, is his daughter, 8 years old, maybe 10. Her eyes are wide with a kind of wonder only children still have. Her smile hasn't faded once since they stepped out of the car. To her, this isn't just a hotel. This is a castle. This is the kind of place she's only seen in movies, the kind of place where princesses live and elevators have buttons for floors she can't even count on both hands. "Dad, is this really where we're staying?" she whispers, tugging at his sleeve, practically bouncing on her toes. He looks down at her, and for the first time all day, something in his tired face softens. A small smile breaks through the exhaustion. "Yeah, baby, this is it." They walk toward the entrance together, her steps light and eager, his heavy but steady. But before they reach the door, a security guard steps directly into their path, arms crossed, jaw set. Not a nod, not a "good evening, sir." Just a hand raised, palm out, blocking them like a wall that appeared out of nowhere. "Can I help you?" His tone isn't a question, it's a challenge. Behind the front desk, a woman in a sharp navy blazer watches from a distance, her heels clicking softly as she steps closer to get a better look. Her name tag reads manager. Her eyes move over the man's coat, his shoes, his daughter's small backpack with a cartoon character stitched onto the front. And in less than 3 seconds, she's already made up her mind. These two don't belong here. She doesn't say it out loud. She doesn't have to. It's written all over the way she tilts her head, the way her mouth presses into a thin, polite, dismissive line. The little girl looks up at her father, confusion creeping into her voice, her excitement deflating like air escaping a balloon. "Dad, are we at the wrong hotel?" And right there in that one sentence, in that one small, innocent question, something in the audience's chest tightens. Because we all know what's coming next. The father doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't even flinch. He's been here before in one form or another more times than he'd like to count. He simply says, calm as still water, "I have business here." The manager, still standing a few feet away, lets out a short laugh, not loud, but loud enough. Loud enough for the two guests checking in nearby to look up from their passports. Loud enough for the bellhop to pause mid-step, luggage cart squeaking to a halt. Loud enough for the little girl to feel it land on her skin like something cold and unwelcome. "Business," the manager repeats, amused, almost incredulous. "Sir, this isn't that kind of hotel." A small crowd has started to gather now, the kind that doesn't mean to stare, but simply can't help it. A couple in evening wear near the elevator, whispering behind cupped hands. A businessman scrolling his phone, glancing up just long enough to catch the scene, then looking back down like nothing happened at all, like witnessing cruelty is just background noise if you don't look too closely. The security guard steps closer, his hand hovering near the radio clipped to his belt. "I'm going to need you to head back outside. Now, please." The father looks at him, just for a second, long enough for anyone paying attention to notice something in his eyes, not anger, not even hurt exactly. Patience. The kind of patience that only comes from a man who has walked into rooms like this before. Many times, in many cities, wearing many different coats, being met with many different versions of the same suspicion. He turns to his daughter, crouches slightly so he's at her eye level, and says quietly, gently, like it's just the two of them in the world, "It's okay, sweetheart. Let's step outside for a second." She doesn't understand. Not fully. But she understands enough. Enough to feel her cheeks burn hot with embarrassment. Enough to lower her head as they walk back through the same doors they just walked through minutes ago, this time with dozens of eyes on their backs, this time with none of the excitement she'd carried in. Behind them, through the glass, the manager already seems to be moving on, adjusting a stack of papers on the front desk as though the interruption never happened at all. To her, this was a routine matter, handled and closed within minutes. She doesn't glance back toward the door even once. Outside, under the hotel's golden awning, with the cold night air wrapping around them, she looks up at him. "Dad, why didn't you get mad?" And here's where the audience leans in a little closer. Because that question isn't just hers. It's ours too. Why isn't he angry? The father doesn't answer her question. Not yet. He crouches down instead, zipping her jacket up a little higher against the wind. Then he reaches into his coat pocket and pulls out his phone. His daughter watches, curious now, as he scrolls through his contacts, finds a name and presses call. He turns slightly away from her, not out of secrecy, but out of habit. The habit of a man used to handling things quietly, without fuss, without an audience. The phone rings once, twice. Then a voice answers on the other end. We don't hear what's said. We only hear his side of it, low and even. "Yeah, it's me." A pause. His eyes flick toward the glowing windows of the lobby. "I'm outside." Another pause, longer this time. His jaw tightens just slightly, the only crack in his composure all night. "No, it's fine, just come when you can, there's no rush." He hangs up. That's it, that's all we get. No explanation, no hint, just 3 quiet sentences and a phone screen going dark in his palm. His daughter tilts her head, studying his face. Who was that? He smiles faintly, tucking the phone back into his coat. Someone who's going to fix this. She doesn't push further. At her age, she trusts him completely, the way children trust the one steady thing in a shaky, confusing moment. But the audience? The audience is already spinning theories, already whispering guesses at their screens. Is he calling a friend? A lawyer, a journalist, someone with money, someone with power? Inside the lobby, through the glass doors, the manager glances toward them one more time before turning back to her desk. Already convinced the matter is closed. Already filing this away as just another minor inconvenience in an otherwise ordinary Tuesday night. She has no idea it hasn't even started. Minutes tick by. The father checks his watch once, twice, but says nothing more. His daughter leans against his arm, watching the cars pass on the street, watching the doorman shift his weight from foot to foot, watching the world continue on as if nothing unusual had just happened at all. 10 minutes pass, then 15. The father and daughter sit on a stone bench just outside the entrance, the cold air settling around them like an unwelcome guest of its own. She leans her head against his arm, eyes growing heavy. He wraps his coat slightly around her shoulders, careful, protective. Then headlights. A sleek black car pulls up to the curb, engine humming low and expensive, the kind of sound that makes people stop what they're doing without quite knowing why. The valet straightens up immediately, already reaching for the door handle before the car has fully stopped rolling. A man steps out, sharp suit perfectly tailored, leather briefcase gripped in one hand, the kind of walk that says I bill by the hour and I know it. Through the glass doors the manager notices. Her posture shifts just slightly, just enough to matter. A lawyer, she thinks, straightening her blazer instinctively. Of course, he probably knows someone who knows someone, that tracks. The bystanders who had gathered earlier now watch with renewed interest, whispering among themselves near the fountain, near the elevator, near the front desk where nobody is technically working, but everybody is somehow watching. Guess he really did know somebody, one of them murmurs. The suited man walks straight up to the father, shakes his hand firmly, exchanges a few quiet words, and says just loud enough for a few nearby ears to catch. "Sorry for the wait, let's get this sorted out properly." The manager straightens her blazer again, preparing an explanation, an apology, some professional, rehearsed version of I was just doing my job, sir, you understand. But here's the twist inside the twist. The lawyer isn't the reveal. He's not the owner. He's not the story everyone thinks they're watching unfold. He's just a piece, a single domino in a much longer line. Because as he turns to walk inside with the father, another car is already turning into the driveway behind him, headlights sweeping across the wet pavement. And this one isn't just expensive. It's the kind of car that makes valets stand up straighter without being told to, the kind of car that makes people instinctively lower their voices as it approaches, as if just being near it demands a certain kind of respect. Even with the lawyer standing beside him now, the manager doesn't budge. If anything, her posture stiffens further, her chin lifting in quiet defiance. "I understand you may have representation now," she says coolly, folding her hands in front of her. "But rules are rules. Without a reservation under your name, I can't grant lobby access. I'm sure you understand the policy." The lawyer opens his mouth to argue, his voice already rising with the kind of indignation that comes naturally to men who spend their lives arguing for a living. But the father raises a hand gently, stopping him before he can start. "It's fine," he says, his voice still calm, still steady, like none of this surprises him at all. "We'll wait." No confrontation, no demand, just quiet acceptance of another small cruelty layered on top of the first. His daughter, exhausted now, drags her feet toward a bench near the entrance. Not inside, not even in the waiting area with its soft leather chairs and warm lighting, just outside in the cold, where the wind cuts sharper the longer the night drags on. She sits down heavily, her small shoulders sinking, her eyelids fighting to stay open. "Dad, my feet hurt. Can we go somewhere warm?" He kneels in front of her, rubbing her small hands between his to warm them, blowing gently on her fingers the way he must have done 100 times before, on 100 other cold nights. "I know, baby. Just a little longer, I promise." Somewhere behind the glass, the manager watches this moment too. A tired child, a patient father, a lawyer standing awkwardly to the side, unsure what to do with his own indignation. And still, something in her doesn't move. Doesn't soften, doesn't crack even slightly. Rules are rules, she tells herself again like a mantra, like armor. But rules we're about to learn don't apply the way she thinks they do. They never did. Inside the hotel, something shifts. A group of men and women in tailored suits begin gathering near the private elevator, board members, judging by the quiet urgency in their voices, the papers tucked under their arms, the phones pressed to their ears. The kind of energy that says something important is happening tonight, and everyone better be ready for it. The manager is summoned over, her heels clicking rapidly across the marble. "Has he arrived yet?" one of them asks, checking his watch with visible impatience. "Not yet," she replies, glancing toward the entrance out of habit, her mind still elsewhere, still on the man and his daughter sitting outside in the cold. Another board member steps beside her, adjusting his cufflinks. "He said he'd be here by 11. He's never late." "Are we certain he's coming through the main entrance?" a third board member asks, glancing toward the private elevator. "We could send someone to the side door, save him the walk through the lobby." "He specifically asked to come through the front," the chairman replies, checking his phone. "Said he wanted to see the place the way any other guest would before we make it official." Nobody thinks much of that comment in the moment. It's the kind of thing powerful men say to sound humble. Nobody in that group has any idea just how literally he meant it. She checks the clock mounted above the front desk. 11:04. "I'll let you know the moment he arrives. I'm sure there's just..." She stops mid-sentence. Because the chairman of the board, the oldest man in the group, silver-haired, the one everyone else seems to defer to without needing to be told, has turned his head toward the glass doors. And he's smiling, a wide, warm, genuine smile. He starts walking, past the manager, past the front desk, past the small crowd still lingering from earlier, still whispering about the man and the lawyer and the strange, tense energy hanging over the lobby. Straight toward the entrance, straight toward the bench, straight toward the tired little girl and the man sitting beside her, rubbing warmth back into her small hands. The manager's stomach drops before her mind even catches up to what's happening. No, she thinks, a cold wave of realization crawling up her spine. No, that can't be. But it is. The chairman pushes the door open himself, no assistant trailing behind him, no announcement, no fanfare, and extends his hand toward the man on the bench like they're old friends meeting for dinner. "Sorry to keep you waiting out here. Traffic from the airport, I assume." The father stands, brushing off his coat, shaking the chairman's hand with the same calm he's carried all night, as if none of the last hour had happened at all. "Something like that." The chairman turns to the small crowd now frozen near the entrance, his voice carrying easily across the lobby. "Everyone, this is the majority shareholder of this hotel chain. As of this week, he's officially the newest member of our board." Silence. Real, heavy, suffocating silence. The kind that seems to swallow every other sound in the room, the fountain, the soft jazz playing overhead, the shuffle of feet. The manager's blazer suddenly feels far too tight. The security guard who blocked the entrance earlier suddenly finds something very interesting to look at on the marble floor. The lawyer, still standing off to the side, allows himself the smallest, quietest smile. Nobody recognized him. Not because he wasn't important, but because nobody bothered to look past what they assumed he was the moment he walked through that door. His face was never in the boardroom photos plastered proudly around the lobby, not yet anyway. His deal had closed quietly, privately, the way real power often moves, far from cameras and press releases. He'd built his fortune the long way, starting with a single struggling motel decades ago, working nights at the front desk himself before he ever owned a single property. Nobody was supposed to know who he was tonight. He preferred it that way. He always had. Except now, everybody does. And here's where most stories, most channels chasing quick, easy satisfaction, would go for the obvious, cathartic punch. You're all fired. Get her badge, now escort her out. But that's not what happens. Because this story was never about revenge. The chairman turns to him, almost eager, already reaching for his phone. Say the word and we'll handle personnel immediately. This is completely unacceptable and everyone in this lobby knows it. The board members nod in agreement, murmuring among themselves. The manager stands frozen near the front desk, waiting for the blow she knows, deep down, she deserves. But the father shakes his head slowly. I'm not angry that she didn't recognize me. He looks directly at the manager now, not with rage, not with satisfaction, but with something far heavier. Something that lands harder than shouting ever could. I'm disappointed in how she treated my daughter. The words hang in the air like smoke that won't clear, drifting over the marble floors, over the gathered crowd, over the chairman's outstretched phone. The manager's eyes drop to the floor. For the first time all night, she has nothing to say. No policy to hide behind, no rule to recite like a shield. Because this was never about paperwork or reservations or lobby access. It was about a little girl who asked her father if they were standing at the wrong hotel, when the truth was, the hotel had been standing on the wrong side of decency the entire time. The father continues, quieter now, almost gentle, almost kind, in a way that somehow makes it sting even more. Anyone can learn a policy, anyone can memorize a rule book, but you can't train someone to see people as people. That has to already be in them before they ever put on the uniform. He glances briefly at his daughter, still sitting on the bench, watching everything with tired, curious eyes. She's 8, she's never once in her life had to think about how she looks to a stranger. Tonight, she learned that some people will decide who she is before she even opens her mouth. Nobody argues, nobody defends the manager. The silence in the lobby says more than any punishment ever could. His daughter, who had been watching everything unfold with wide, tired eyes, finally tugs at his sleeve again, her voice small but steady. Dad, do we still want to stay here? It's such a simple question, but it carries the weight of everything that happened tonight. The cold bench, the whispered assumptions, the security guard's raised hand, all of it. The father crouches down to her level, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and smiles, not the tired smile from earlier, but something warmer, something rebuilding itself in real time. Only if we can make it a place where everyone is treated with respect, he says softly. Starting tonight, starting right now. He looks up, not at the chairman, not at the board members eager for his approval, but directly at the manager, still standing frozen by the front desk. That includes second chances, if people are willing to actually change, not apologize, change. The manager finally looks up, and for the first time, her eyes are glassy, rimmed with something close to genuine shame. Not from fear of losing her job, not from the professional embarrassment of the moment. From something closer to recognition. The kind of shame that teaches more in a single sentence than any punishment ever could. The chairman clears his throat, breaking the heavy silence. We'll make sure tonight becomes a lesson for the entire staff, not just here, every property in the chain, starting with new training this month. The father nods, takes his daughter's small hand in his, and walks back through the same doors that turned them away less than an hour ago. This time, nobody stops them. This time, nobody stares, Or if they do, it's with something closer to quiet respect than suspicion. They walk past the front desk, past the fountain, past the marble floors that once felt like they didn't belong to people like them, and somehow now feel entirely different beneath their feet. And as they step into the private elevator, his daughter looks up at him one last time, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, were you ever scared, back there when they wouldn't let us in?" He shakes his head, pressing the button for their floor, the doors beginning to slide shut. "No, sweetheart, I've been misjudged before. More times than I can count. It doesn't scare me anymore." He pauses, looking down at her with something like quiet pride swelling in his chest. "What scares me is a world where you have to be rich or powerful or own the whole building just to be treated with basic respect. That's what we're here to change. Not just for us. For everyone who walks through those doors after us, the ones who'll never own a hotel chain, who'll never make a phone call that fixes everything in 10 minutes. They deserve better, too." The elevator doors close, and somewhere behind them, in a lobby that suddenly feels far too quiet, the manager stands staring at her own reflection in the polished floor, finally seeing, for the first time all night, exactly what she'd been looking at all along. Not a threat, not an outsider, just a father trying to give his daughter one good night in a world that too often refuses to make that simple. The story could end there, most versions of it do. But real change doesn't happen in a single dramatic moment inside a lobby. It happens in the weeks that follow quietly when the cameras, if there ever were any, have long since stopped rolling. Weeks later, that same hotel rolls out a new company-wide training program, one built specifically around a single guiding question employees are taught to ask themselves before making any judgment about a guest. Would they treat this person differently if they assumed nothing about them at all? The manager keeps her job, not because the incident is forgotten, but because she asks for the chance to prove she's changed, and she takes it seriously, sitting through every session, asking harder questions than anyone else in the room. Months later, the same father returns to that same hotel with his daughter, this time for a quiet weekend, no board meetings, no lawyers, no reveals. Just a father and his daughter walking through the same doors. This time, the manager greets them personally at the entrance, opening the door herself. "Welcome back," she says, and she means it. His daughter, a little older now, a little more sure of herself, looks up and smiles. "Dad, I think she remembers us this time." He smiles back, squeezing her hand. "Yeah, baby, I think she does." We like to believe respect is something people earn through titles, through wealth, through how expensive their coat looks under fluorescent lighting, or how shiny the car is that drops them off at the curb. But real respect was never supposed to be conditional. It was never supposed to depend on what car pulls up outside, or whose name appears etched onto a boardroom door somewhere upstairs. Tonight, one man reminded an entire hotel, and maybe all of us watching from the other side of a screen, that dignity was never something you had to prove. It was something you were always owed, from the very beginning. No exceptions, no conditions, no fine print. The question isn't really whether we'd recognize someone like him walking through our own doors, whether we'd know to treat him differently because of what he owns or who he knows. The real question, the one worth sitting with long after this video ends, is whether we'd have treated him exactly the same, with the same warmth, the same patience, the same respect, even if he had never turned out to be anyone at all. If this story moved you, stay with us, because the next one might hit even closer to home than you expect.